Hey guys, Dan here,
And Frank Godzilla Island.
and this is the Mazer Squad episode number 11, and we're going to be covering Space Monster Wangmagwi.
Yeah.
And I pronounced it correctly. I watched the commentary track.
Oh. So you watched it twice.
I did watch it twice. I watched the movie twice. I wanted to watch the special features, but I didn't have the time for it, so I just watched the regular, and then I watched the commentary.
All right.
Yeah.
But let's get into some news first.
Yeah, some quick news. It's been a little light since the last episode.
First up we have, we mentioned last episode, we have SD Kamen Rider coming out later in April this year for Switch, and I believe it's going to be on Steam also. But through their official website, their Japanese website, they announced DLC already. They're going to have Shin Godzilla is going to be added to the game, Ultraman, and Unit 1 from the Neon Genesis will be in there. So this is going to be a Shin Universe Japan Hero Universe game, because you're going to be able to play each of these four characters now. I'm hoping that we get that DLC here in the States. It'll be cool to have Godzilla and Ultraman and even Unit 1 in a beat-em-up game.
Yeah, alongside.
This game looks really fun. I'm really excited for it. When I first saw it announced, I was like, oh man, I'm buying this instantly, because it gave me like Double Dragon vibes and just like old school 90s beat-em-up style. It just looks like a fun like button masher, time waster game.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really liked is, like, even I mentioned it last week, I'm like, oh, I hope they have like skins available, because there wasn't really anything about that. So now it kind of confirms that, like,
I think
probably going to get
skins.
Other skins too if this game does decent.
Yeah, I really hope it does great. I'm just glad to see it coming here stateside. And there's an English trailer out now too, where you only had like the Japanese trailer, not even with subs for a little while, but PlayAsia had the English version listed, so we knew it was coming here.
Yeah.
And the other thing is they are going to be doing a Chibi Godzilla anime coming out April 1st. It's not an April Fool's joke. Everyone thought that's what it was. They're like, oh, early April Fool's joke announcement. But there's going to be a weekly series every Saturday releasing in Japan. I'm wondering if it's going to be on YouTube like Godzilla is.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
I think it probably will be eventually.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it wasn't.
It's not. There's like the Chibi Godzilla. If you guys remember, the figures came out about almost 4 years ago now.
Yeah,
where Godzilla almost barely looks like Godzilla, but Ghidorah and all the rest really look good.
Yeah, Godzilla kind of looks almost like a green sheep or something.
Like a cow almost, yeah. Godzilla looks weird,
but
Chibi Godzilla.
If you guys haven't seen it, just look up Chibi Godzilla dance video. It's probably the best thing you're ever going to see. It's going to make your day. It's amazing. I hope that's somehow worked into the anime. Who knows?
I'm sure they will. I mean, just the fact that they're making a weekly TV series for this is nuts.
I mean, I feel like if Godzilla Band is popular enough, like, why not try to expand to more children's content?
No, absolutely.
Even though Godzilla Band's a little weird to be children's content. And one last bit of news. Friend of the show, Frankie B. We are going to be getting Kaiju and Cowboys #2, and that's going to be on Kickstarter this time. That's going to be on April 17th, so mark your calendars. I don't know if the page is up yet for you to set a reminder.
I've been looking for it. I don't think it's up yet. I'm sure he will let everyone know when it goes live, along with Matt Blair. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm really glad they're doing Kickstarter this time. They did really good when they did issue 0 on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Issue 1, I liked it on Zoop, but as they released those milestone items, I found it kind of annoying that I had to cancel my pledge and like add the milestone items onto it. I like on Kickstarter where you could manage your pledge, add add-ons and all the milestone items and anything as the campaign goes on. I felt dirty having to
cancel.
unpledged each time. I'm like, oh, I'm taking away a backer now.
Yeah, I thought that was like a one kind of quip about Zoop was like it was nice, but yeah, having to cancel every single time I changed my order was a bit annoying.
Yeah, yeah,
I wish I could just add on items.
yeah, exactly.
And
Or
hoping to get some good patches, maybe some pins this time.
yeah, no, they always throw a nice swag for it. I like the stickers and all that.
Yeah, sketch cards.
Yep, absolutely the sketch cards. Yeah,
Yeah,
the cards are awesome.
yeah. So we're
And
looking forward to that.
yeah,
We'll post more information when it comes out. The cover's out and it looks amazing.
yes, yes. It always looks so good from Frankie.
Yeah.
But yeah, another Kickstarter crowdfunding comic that we're going to be covering. Um, Today, on top of doing Space Monster, we're also going to be covering Stomped issue 4, which is the current final issue. So moving on from there, we're going to start doing the Territory comics. I've reviewed the Territory comics a few times on here, but I've never done it with Dan.
Yeah.
So we're gonna go back, do them again with both of us. So we'll go a little more in depth with them. Issue 3 came out. We got it in the mail a few weeks ago. I still have not read it yet. I've held out
Yeah.
for the physical copy, but we're gonna review issue 3 for the show as well.
Yeah, and that's going to be for the next episode, along with our Godzilla the series reviews, which we'll see if that's going to be an every episode thing or if that's
Might
going to be its own
alternate or
series.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, depending on episode length. You really want to try to
yeah,
keep these under an hour and a half.
yeah.
Under an
Yeah, but
hour would
last
be the
episode we
best.
had 6 months of catching up to do, so it went a lot longer than we wanted.
Yeah.
But with that being said, let's dive in now. Let's
Yeah.
dive in.
Just one other thing I want to note. This is gonna be like a
Oh
preview
yeah.
for possibly future content on the channel. I got this today, and it is Gamera in 3D, the Goodman cut, which apparently is the American version of Gamera the Brave, but with all the American added scenes cut out of it. And
Oh,
it's also been remastered in 3D. And it's not like real D3D. It's like this boy
classic. It's classic.
classic
Special
3D.
special event TV event where you have to buy a TV guide to get 3D glasses
Yes.
for viewing that week.
So I'm going to be doing a video where I watch the original Gamera, I watch this, and then I tell you guys if this is worth it. It was pretty cheap. It was like $15 on Etsy. And basically the guy who made it was like, I just want to do movies that should have been 3D in 3D. So I don't even know if this is any good, but we'll keep an eye out for that.
Yes, and the other thing is, since that movie is public domain, it's not really a bootleg.
Yeah, there was some weird copyright stuff
It's
that
like
happened in the
gray area.
60s where like movies that probably shouldn't have gone into public domain went into public domain. So the American cut of Gamera, the first movie, is in public
Gorgo, too.
domain. Yeah, Gorgo 2. There's a
He's
couple
right
of
there.
them that
Yeah.
like weirdly somehow got in public domain, but like Kong from 1933, not public domain.
Yeah,
But like movies from the 60s, yeah, it's public domain.
yeah,
Gotta love those big American corporations.
yeah. Hey, the good thing about that though is we got Gorgo coming to us now. We got these awesome reprints of the comics, so hopefully it works out sometimes for us.
Yeah. So let's go on over. We're gonna go over to Stomped first.
Yeah, yeah. Let's dive into Stomped first. So we got a lot to cover in Stomped.
All right. So Stomped issue number 4. Well, Stomped Anthology issue number 4. I got to make that distinction because while this is the end of the anthology, this series is going to continue on.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
we'll get into that, I guess, at the end of
We'll get
the
into that at the end,
review.
yeah.
But don't worry, guys. This is going to continue.
Oh boy, is it going to continue.
Yeah. So you want
really
to start with the first?
The first story in this anthology is Toxicity by Ross Radke and inks by Dominic. Black by Ross Radke, not System of a Down. Different Toxicity. So it starts off. They're following this kaiju Larry, big, sluggish, slow, bulbous kaiju, just walking through the city it's eating everything in its path, garbage. It's hitting up supermarkets.
but it's like very slow.
Yes, it's been like moving a snail's pace
So
through the
like
city for days.
people think it's like kind of cute, but
Yes,
like
so they named
obviously
it
he's
Larry.
destroying the city. But like
Yeah,
it's gotten a stupid name, like
yes,
Bodie McBoatface. It's Larry. He gave it a pet name.
yeah, yeah, and that's it's even brought up in like the little behind the scenes meeting with the military. Like they gave the thing a name. They
Yeah.
think it's cute. um, and there's this whole plan. Like since it's a very docile kaiju and it's not really killing anyone, it's only kind of eating animals that are
Going into its
unfortunate
path.
enough to walk into its path, really. Um, they're like, you know what, we could use is it non-lethal? I don't know.
I think they wanted to kill it. If I remember, I read it this morning.
They wanted to move it out to
They
sea.
wanted to like get it out of the public eye and then take care of it. They didn't
Yeah,
want anything public happening. They kind of just
yeah.
wanted to.
They're like, no heavy weapons would be involved. There would be no weaponry. So, so one of the scientists comes up with this idea. He's got this kaiju neurotoxin he's been working on, and the toxins only had a 70% success rate, but he doesn't tell the military and everybody all that. And his fellow scientist kind of like scolds him. She's like, "Yo, what are you doing?" She's like, "You don't even know if this is gonna work." And he's like, "I didn't ask you." He's like, "We're just gonna get this thing done." So they get the toxin all produced, and they're like, "This thing likes to eat." So they strap the toxin in these like remote controlled barrels to all these cows, and they pretty much use the cows to lure the kaiju a bit out of the city. And then the news reporters are there too, and the military's like, "Why are these guys here?" And we'll find out a little later about that. But Larry starts eating all these cows, filling up on neurotoxin, and they detonate the neurotoxin inside Larry. And the doctor's like, "Oh, the amount of neurotoxin should take down a kaiju 3 times its size," and he's just kind of sitting there. And then
Yeah.
eventually he starts to turn greener and greener, and then diarrhea and vomit comes out everywhere. Green
Green goo
acid,
everywhere.
green goo everywhere. It kills the reporters like instantly. It like dissolves their skin down to the bone. Gets a military guy. The general's like, "What the fuck just happened?" And it kind of just cuts to the doctor, the scientist, back in the office. He's packing things up because he's been fired. Um, and the female scientist walks in and he's like, "Oh, you're here to tell me I told you so." And she's like, "No, I have something else." She's like, "I know you got a lot on your hands right now, but I'm pregnant." And he's like, "Oh," he's like, "Wait, I'm fired. She's pregnant." Apparently, they're not together because she's offering him custody. But they also mentioned that the neurotoxin did end up working. Larry passed out for like 7 hours, but they were too scared to touch him and didn't want to airlift him out to sea because they thought it would burn the rooftops of the houses.
Yeah.
And
Well,
it turns out Dr. Stein is the one that invited the press. He's the one that invited him there because he wanted to show off to the press his kaiju
yeah.
neurotoxin.
Well, I mean, one of the things that's like obviously like with like the big joke of this is like they want it to be like the most like nonchalant taking out of a kaiju possible, and is like the worst possible way, the most violent and vile way you could possibly
Violent vomit
take
and
out a
diarrhea.
kaiju. It's just like, oh, that just completely 180'd.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably one of my favorite stories so far in this series. It was hysterical.
Yeah, I was just like, oh my god, I
Yeah,
was like, I cannot believe this. So it kind of does like a bit of a jump forward in the story, and we get to see an older, slightly older Dr. Stein, and he's taking care of a kid. She's watching Power Rangers, which there you go, and he's like, oh, it's time for your your allergy medication. And as he's injecting it, he's like, oh, like, thanks, Kim, or so, basically alludes to the fact that his daughter is Kim Corrigan, so now we know it's Dr. Stein. and he's basically she's unknowingly being experimented on by her father to give her superpowers.
So it's sort of a Kim Corrigan slight origin story there. I mean, we know he experimented on her to give her the powers, but now we get an idea of how early it started
Yeah, which
and
is
how unknowing she was about it.
yeah, which could have been possibly from birth, for
Yeah,
all we know.
yeah, yeah. He's at home. He's fired. He's got nothing better to do.
Yeah. So we go from this, and then we like quickly transition to another story. And um, the way this comic book is set up is like a lot of the stories don't get the title card until maybe like halfway through.
Sometimes
So
they're at the beginning, other times they're in the middle,
yeah,
and
yeah. So like the big signifier for that this was a different story was the color the pages of the color have changed, and these are like it's a very involved story, so it's a 12 panel story on each page until we get to like the big reveal part of
yeah.
it. So there's a disclaimer about this story at the beginning of the comic book. It's called Brother's Day Out, and basically kind of reflects Ross's experience as working as a like a social worker or a social aide in a special needs house during the pandemic. So it's, you have these, people that have special needs, don't quite know what's going on, and now they have to wear a mask and all this other stuff. It's kind of crossing that over into this story where it's like, well, what if we have a developmentally delayed character and they have to deal with being locked up in a house while there's a dangerous kaiju roaming the city?
Yep.
And they have
It's
somebody trying to take care of
done.
them. It's amazingly well done, and obviously it is because this is a guy that basically lived through it, so he knows exactly how to properly convey it.
Yeah.
I don't think that somebody who didn't go through that would be able to properly write this story.
I don't think so.
And I mean, this
it would be hard.
Honestly, with that, we haven't even gotten into the plot yet. My favorite Stomped story so far. I've read this 3 times today.
Yeah, I read that. I read this one a bit actually too. For my just the first read through, I gave it a few reads.
Yeah, it was really good.
I stopped at this story a few times, and I just like read it over about 2 or 3 times myself.
Yeah, and it's like one of those things. Just like I don't know if it's being like a new dad or something. Like it really hit home on me on this one.
Yeah, it was really absolutely well done.
So if you haven't backed the Kickstarter, I'm sure this is going to be on Ross's website once the printed copies go out. So check.
And then eventually he's going to be doing a trade paperback version too.
So this is like must read.
Yeah.
To me, like amazing.
Yeah.
So we start with
His Brother's Day Out is the name of the story.
Yes. So we start with him waking up his brother Trevor, trying to get him out of bed, shower, shaved. I really liked the shave one because he's like, the brother's looking like, do not cut me with that razor. And his favorite cereals like Cocoa Puffs. So they're out.
And Choco Poofs.
Choco Poofs. And as you can see, as you can even see from usually I try to show off the whole issue in my banners. I just put all the pictures from this story in this banner. So he didn't have his cereal that he walks. He gets Frosted Flakes instead, and he pours it on the floor, thinks it's funny, and then he's like, "You're gonna help me clean this?" And he's like, "No, I'm gonna go watch Dino Mighty," which is essentially kind of like like a Power Rangers.
Yeah, they're like dinosaur humanoids.
Yeah, but the green dinosaur was clearly wearing dragon shield armor.
Yeah, and he even made it like a reference to sort of Superhuman Samurai Squad, because it was like, oh, we should watch Cyber Squad.
Yeah, there's a couple awesome references in this, and it was just kind of really a fun stuff. I don't want to spoil too much, just because it's a really fun story to read, and he goes. His brother's watching TV, so he's like, I'm going to go sit on my bed and just chill and read some Spandex, which is another Ross Radke comic. So he's reading it, falls asleep, and...
No, that's not what happened.
What?
He didn't fall asleep. No, his brother falls asleep. Trevor falls asleep.
No, he falls asleep reading spandex, and he wakes up to the bangs of Trevor trying to get out.
Oh yes, yes, yeah, that
Yeah,
part. Oh, I thought you were talking about later on.
yeah.
Sorry,
Later on,
sorry.
this is later on. Later on.
Okay, I was like, oh, we
So,
jump into this part already.
so. Well, no. This is the order.
Yeah, yeah,
So Trevor is trying to get out, and he's like, "I want to go out. I want to go out." And he's like, "No." He's like, "We can't go outside. You know, it's too dangerous right now." You know, he's like, why don't you go back downstairs? He calms him down with some breathing exercises, and gets him to take his medicine. Fixes up his boo boo on his head because he's hitting his head on the wall trying to get outside. And
yeah. And he's asking for his parents too, and he's like, "Not today,
yeah,
buddy."
yeah. Which I hope we get a follow up on this one because I'm like, did the parents evacuate the city? Because we find out they're in an evacuated city.
Yes.
But he's like, did the parents evacuate? Did they die? We don't know
Yeah.
what's going on with the parents. And I really hope we get a follow up on this story because honestly, this is one of my favorite ones. This is my favorite one. So, reads him a bedtime story, space monkeys, and like it's like a funny thing because it's like, obviously, it's like he's like reading it, and then like as like you get like time jumps, like it's not a happy story at the end, but his brother's asleep by the time it gets to the not happy part.
I I don't know. Did he just like? Was he just like? Oh, he's just passed out, so screw it. And he made up that ending.
Maybe.
Because that's what I was like. If he was like, oh, he's asleep. Who cares what happens at the end of the book?
It could be. It could definitely be one of those things.
I think that's what he was like. He's like, I'm not done with the book, but so we're just gonna say that they all died at the end of this book. So we're closing it.
He's already sleeping. Yeah, he's already sleeping. Yeah. Which I thought that was a good bit of humor injected. So he goes out in the middle of the night and goes grocery shopping, which, as we've seen from other comic books, grocery shopping basically means looting a closed down grocery store. So he's picking up some odds and ends.
And the store's pretty well stocked.
It is.
They have like everything. Because it sounds like the town was not too.
It was evacuated like a year and a half ago, but like evacuated like. Don't stay in the city, you're gonna die. Evacuated.
Yeah, everybody left. Nobody hung out, but they stayed.
Yeah. So he like.
But while he's out on this bike ride, we see this kaiju up here, up on the top of the screen here. He's overlooking the city, the town, kind of.
Yeah, because he's got, as you can see, he's got like a million eyeballs on him.
Yeah.
So.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. The cover kaiju. I mean, all the kaijus look great, but all the cover ones are always like. Amazing, and yeah, the detail on this guy is just super good. But he gets like a case of the Cocoa Poofs, and then he sees a little display stand of I'm assuming it's sake, just from the way the bottle looked.
Yeah.
So he's like, Trevor's sleeping. I could have some fun. So he's out. He's out at night. He's riding his bike. He's drinking his sake. And it looks like he got home.
Yes,
but, like,
he got home.
Passed out, staring at the stars.
Yes.
So he wakes up to the, like, I guess they're in, like, almost like a bunker. Because, like, the hatch is open.
Yeah, well, they're not, I don't think they're... Are they in a bunker? I couldn't really tell. I guess, because he looked like he went downstairs almost to go into the bunker, then kind of, like, sneak out of the house. Like,
yeah, I'm not...
Like, the door's locked, he doesn't know how to get out that way, so I could go in through the bunker hole.
Yeah, maybe, or, maybe he, like, passed out nearby, didn't quite make it home. But, like, the gist is, like, he escaped. Trevor escaped.
Yeah. Yeah, so he woke up and the door's left open, Trevor's out in the wild.
He's, searched the apartment, not anywhere. So he finds Trevor at, like, the end of this cliff that overlooks the city, and he's like, oh, Dynamighty, Dynamighty. And it's the kaiju, which, granted, is
the kaiju has horns on its head too, and the main character of Dynamite, it was a Triceratops too. So he was associating the horns with the Triceratops,
and it's very similar coloration as well.
Yes.
So he's like, we gotta go.
He's like, that's not Dynamite.
He's like, this is not good.
Yeah, and then the military, it cuts to the military watching the kaiju, and then you see the two of them, and they're like, what the hell are you doing up on that cliff? And the military gets them down, and the military is like, yeah, we're about to eliminate this thing, and he's like, oh, you're gonna bomb it, and they're like, no, we got Kim Corrigan, and he's like, who? And it cuts to her, and she's pretty much just getting ready to take this thing down.
Which again, this is another thing I love about this outfit that they have on Kim Corrigan. Figuring out which way to point to that way. Awesome. Like this shot of her just like looks like a badass superhero, just like ready to go. And she has a great personality too. Like chit chatting with Trevor and everything.
Yeah.
And like he's just like, you don't know who Kim Corrigan is, and he's like, we lost internet like half a year ago. So he's like, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
He's like, we've been in this bunker for a year and a half.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been in the dark.
So they're like walking away, and you just kind of see like Kim in the background just like flying through this guy.
You just see like a little mini explosion on its skull. Like you just see like a green splat. And you're like, oh, and in the car, he's like, did she just do that? And, but as they're evacuating, he's like, oh, we just have to make like one quick stop before we go anywhere. It's going to make everything a lot easier for both of us. And they stop back to pick up with a case of Choco Puffs.
Yeah.
And that's like one of the last things we see is this shot right above her head saying it's part of a complete breakfast.
Yeah, I love that too. I was just like, ah, that old school cereal advertising. I'm just like, ah, like this whole story just hits on so many levels.
Yeah.
Pulls at the heartstring. Badass hero, badass looking kaiju. Great references to like 90s pop culture and cereal advertising, and
yeah,
like the best story in that whole anthology.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it was awesome. I mean, they were pretty much they killed it. He killed it, Ross. And Ross did all the art and writing on this one.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, yeah. And this was a solo piece for him.
Absolutely amazing.
Which I could imagine it was near and dear.
Yeah, it really had to be a labor of love. So
yeah, and then from here, from like such like a.
Could you try again?
Sorry, serious.
From such a somewhat heavy story moves on to a very lighthearted PSA story now, which is The Care, and it's basically
it's like
a Dare parody, but it's well, I forgot what the K stands for.
It's Kaiju.
Kaiju. Yeah, it's basically Kaiju instead of Dare.
Yeah, so it's so basically they're against people abusing
Kaiju remains.
Kaiju. So basically, there's, like as have been hit on in like the last two stories, there's a huge black market for Kaiju remains and people using them like drugs or like steroids or experimenting on themselves with it. So basically, like they're trying to put out PSAs for kids to be like, don't do this. Like it's not safe. But the funny part is that Kim Corrigan being the spokesperson
at the end, and she's like, "Yeah, I don't condone this either."
And it's just like that's how you have your powers. And clearly, she didn't consent to it, but
no,
that's how she has her powers.
They're like it could kill you or worse, and it's like funny. So the whole story is basically like three kids, and there's a kaiju tooth with like
goo
liquid in it, and one of the kids is like, "I dare you to drink that," and he's like, "All right." And it's almost like a Tide Pod challenge thing.
Yeah.
Because the kid calls it, I wanted to drink the Kai juice.
Oh, yes.
I was like, he's calling it Kai juice. And it was pretty much like a don't do Tide Pods type of ad almost.
Yes. There's like a rabbit.
He's like, the forbidden Kai juice? He's like, I really want to drink it. And then it shows, what could happen? It shows like the kid like melting and stuff. Yeah. But he doesn't.
The great single page PSA comic, so good, just like hilarious.
It's a super funny laugh.
You know, even though like last story did have like a nice lighthearted ending, it was nice to follow this even up with like a little bit more lighthearted jokiness. It was a nice flow for the comic book because the next one got a little heavy too, but like it was a very quick story.
Yeah, but what's pretty interesting about this one is between these stories now we have, I guess once we get the physical, we'll see it looks almost like centerfold-ish. There's the kaiju size chart, and then there's even like a map with a timeline and stuff.
Yeah. One of the cool things.
on the timeline, it shows you like the casualties from each attack, and this next story is a pretty high casualty attack.
Yeah,
Well, a
what?
prelude to a
Yeah,
high casualty attack.
one of the cool things about those charts though is that like you got to see like which countries had like the highest kaiju attacks,
Yes,
and
that was really
surprisingly,
cool.
Japan was one of like the green zones. Like it's good to go, don't have to worry about it.
Oh, I missed that. I took a good look at that. How did I miss
Yeah, I
that?
was there was like a couple countries I was like looking at, and then there's like some countries that didn't have any info, like North Korea or Iceland.
Antarctica, I
Yeah,
think.
they were like grayed out.
Yeah,
So I was like, huh, all right. It was a really cool looking map, like something I gotta study more. I probably looked at
yeah,
it for about 10 minutes, but I definitely it's like one of those things I'm gonna like sit for like an hour and just look at,
yeah.
try to like figure out.
Yeah, I can't wait to get the physical copy of
I
this.
know.
Usually I hold out for the physical copy, but I'm like we were on a roll with this, so I was like, let's just do it. Let's dive into it. I'll read it again once the physical
Oh,
comes.
definitely, definitely gonna be rereading this one multiple times.
Yeah.
So
Next story
yeah,
is Jonah.
yeah, Jonah, and
Um,
it's a pretty cool little snippet. This
yeah,
one.
it goes really quick. It basically opens up. A bunch of pirates are pretty much have taken over a ship that's full of scientists, and they're like, "You got all this expensive science equipment. It's got to be worth something. What can we resell on here? What do you have a value?" And all of a sudden, there's this device on the ship that just starts beeping, and the pirate's like, "What is that?" And one of the scientists is like, "You got to let me shut that off." And next thing you know, a giant claw comes up through the water, just destroys the ship. And this kaiju in this article, as we see from the chart, his name is Jumbo, and it's basically a jumbo super giant shrimp. And it destroys the boat. The scientist in this is the one that wanted to shut it off, swims down to the bottom of the ocean to try to shut the device off. But the kaiju catches her, and you see her body surface with the device cut in half. And there's like the one remaining pirate that freed her to go swim down and get it. We can only assume he gets killed. And then it kind of cuts to the beach where this device is washed up and is beeping, and the kaiju is heading towards Florida. And according to the chart and timeline, the Florida attack was a very high casualty attack. And I'm wondering if we're going to see it. But this is where it ends for that story. It's
Yeah,
a really quick one.
I was wondering about that device because obviously they don't provide. I'm like, was that a kaiju detecting device, or was that like a almost like the orca
Yes,
from King of
that's
the
what I felt like it
Monsters?
kind of was like an orca type of thing. And it was putting out some sort of signal that they did not like.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering, and I'm like, man, it's like one of those things you're just like, oh, I do not want to know what happened here, but even though I do want to see it.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, very short story, very quick read. I think it's about like six
yeah,
pages, 6 7 pages.
yeah.
A lot of
It was
action.
yes, it
Yeah,
was full action, not much character development at all, just character destroying.
yeah. Yeah, and then the next one's very short too, but it like also like very like good. And another it's another story that really reminded me of kind of like the way the pandemic was because it was a city. It's called After the Kaiju, and it's about a city that's been completely basically leveled, and all
Yeah,
these people just
the
coming
first panel
together.
in it is the kaiju leaving the city, so it's like literally
Yeah,
boom after the kaiju just left.
yeah, and it's just a bunch of people coming out, taking care of each other, making some food, making sure everybody's fine, and like they're all just kind of sitting together, hanging
Bringing
out, and just making
plates,
the best
different
out of it.
food. Yeah, they
Yeah,
basically it ends with like a big feast. Really, there's no actual text in the story at all. It's just a complete visual story.
yeah,
It's just basically a bunch of people getting together, feasting, helping each other out, and that's how the book ends. That's how this anthology ends. But not without teases for what's to come next, and there's a lot to come next.
yeah, yeah,
Which
yeah. He,
I got really excited when I saw that segment. I mean, there's also, of course, besides the news of what's coming next, they also include a bunch of different commissions and stuff at the end of the book, and there's always the awesome notes for the process
Yes.
of making the book. Um, but yeah, coming in June will be a one shot, a Kim Corrigan origin story, basically for this one shot, 40 pages. There'll be a Kickstarter campaign for that, so we'll be all over that when that goes live. And then on top of that, they will be doing a. We'll also be doing a trade paperback graphic novel that contains these first four anthologies plus one additional story called "Live Through This." And he also says that he has the Stomp Saga mapped out to the point where he could do 5 or more volumes. So if they continue the 4-issue volume, I mean, we're in for at least another 20 issues of this series, which is
Yeah.
pretty mind blowing. I mean, this
Yeah.
is going to be around for years. I mean, Ross has killed it with this. I mean, he's brought on great artists. He himself has done fantastic with the writing and his own art. I'm excited to see what
Yeah.
comes next. I mean, I'm always excited to see what comes next.
Yeah. And one of the big teases that for this story coming out in June is it's going to basically be Kim Corrigan versus the Mass from the second issue, which is that mind controlling kaiju tissue that
Yeah,
kind of regrew itself. So I'm like, that's gonna be like, to me, that's like Superman versus Brainiac. You know,
yeah,
that's gonna be
yeah.
a cool story. If
I
that's gonna
think
be
it's going to be a
the
really cool.
full, if that's gonna be the full 40 pages, just that, that's gonna be
Yeah,
really cool.
yeah. I mean, there was also the Kim Corrigan one shot, the Return to Madrid story too, which was really cool.
Yeah.
That he did. I think that was with the first campaign. I didn't come in until the
I don't know if that
second,
was with the third.
third.
I came in on the third one.
Yeah, I think that might have been when I came in too.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's when that. I'm not sure when that one came in.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, love the series. Again, we've said it in every single review. Go to his website. He has
yeah,
all the digitals. He has some physicals available if you want
yes.
to get the physical issues.
The
And
the
yeah,
the third one is the only one that he does not have available yet on the website. I believe I was looking the other day, but I'm sure it'll be there. If not,
think
just
soon.
yeah, I would be there soon, or you're just gonna have to wait for when he drops the graphic novel. I'm assuming I'm gonna take a wild guess and guess maybe towards the end of the year because he's got the one shot coming out in June. That's gonna take a few months to put together. So
Plus, there's going to be a new story in it,
yeah,
probably new concept art, and getting a book like that. You know, it's not just the comic book. It's going to be a trade paperback. I mean, that's a
it's a
whole
hefty blow.
process with
Yeah,
printers and everything. That could take a while
yeah.
before that comes out.
He did say for the comic backers that he was gonna leave like the notes
Oh,
to
it's going
the
to be
comics. Those are gonna be comic
those are
exclusive.
exclusive to the comic.
Yeah, I believe he did say that in the little excerpt there at the end.
Yeah,
But I think I don't know. I think this last one was probably one of my favorite issues. I mean, I feel like the series has gotten better as it's gone on. Like I want to say
yeah,
four. I want to say my favorites are 4, 3, 2, 1, in
yeah,
that order. Honestly, I mean they're all great, but
yeah.
I
I don't know.
feel like
I
it
like
gets
two a lot.
better each time. Yeah, 2 is really good though.
Yeah, two's really good. Not that any of them are bad. They're all really good.
Yeah,
But
that's exactly the thing. I'm like, I don't really want to say one's at the bottom, but
yeah,
just like 4 and 3 were so good, but 2 is really good too. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, 2 and 3
yeah,
is second place. For 1 is third, maybe for me.
yeah. I mean, it's again.
And then the Return to Madrid, that's on Ross's website. That's a great read also. That's PDF only right now.
Yeah, and
I don't know if he'll include that in the trade paperback. It might be an exclusive
it
thing.
might, but like it's not very. I believe it's like 99 cents on his
Yeah, it's
website.
cheap.
It's
It's
very
cheap.
affordable.
Yeah, if you can't
Like,
pay for that, come on.
yeah, no, it's definitely worth supporting. I mean,
Yeah,
it's awesome, and he has other comic books as
yeah.
well. He has spandex over on
Uh,
oh
Webtoons.
What is Webtoons? I'm like, my wife's always on Webtoons, so I'm like, what's that website?
I can't wait for the seventh issue, man. I know he keeps teasing it the last couple of days. I can't wait for that seventh one to drop.
Yeah.
If you haven't read that yet, they're worth a read. They're quick.
That's probably going to be my next work time. I have to read Territory, but
Yeah.
it's going to be like my next work time read.
Yeah, no, it's
On my
definitely
lunch
worth
break.
reading.
Going to read some spandex.
Oh, the
All
quick
right.
reads. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to be transitioning over to our next review, and that is going to be Godzilla, the Animated Series, Episode 4. Well, actually, I think this is technically Episode 5? No, this is 4.
In the viewing order, it's 4. I'm not exactly sure what the release order is.
Oh, no, I don't care about release order.
Yeah.
Viewing order.
Yeah.
It's 4. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't remember. I'm like, so we did the first 2 episodes.
Yes.
That was part 1, part 2. Then episode 3, now 4.
Yes.
Really, what I'm kind of really loving about this series is it's the 20-minute episodes.
Yes.
And there's mostly, I think there's 1 or 2 other multi-part episodes
I think there's
coming
a couple,
up.
yeah.
But they're all self-contained 20-minute kaiju stories, so it just one after the other after the
It's,
other just happens.
It's just classic 90s Saturday morning goodness.
Yeah.
I was just saying this recently. I'm like, kids these days will never understand Saturday morning 90s cartoons. I mean,
It's just so fast.
there's just like, Saturday mornings were like, you would wake up early on Saturday morning to watch TV all morning until noon. Like,
I actually watched this Saturday morning. My son woke up at like 6 o'clock in the morning,
there you go.
so we just went downstairs and we watched Godzilla.
It was perfect. Perfect.
And it was awesome. I was like, this is kind of like the way it
Yeah.
was. You'd wake up early and go watch TV while the parents were sleeping.
Yeah, what was it? It was the Discotheque just announced
Ultimate Muscle.
Ultimate Muscle. That's why I was like, oh my god, that's like a Saturday morning flashbacks right there.
Yeah. But I guess we'll get into the actual review because
Yeah.
we're just reminiscing
Yeah.
about Saturday morning cartoons now.
So
So
Godzilla Episode 4.
yeah, Godzilla Episode 4, El Gastano Gigante,
Yes.
or the Giant Worm. Again, what I was trying to hinting at is these are just nice short 20-minute. Act 1's 5 minutes, Act 2 probably 10 minutes, and then the last act, the final conclusion, 5 minutes, and you're done.
Yeah.
So we start off there going to kind of where they think Godzilla might have had his origin, where the atomic bomb was dropped, and they're like, oh, this could be where he's from. And it turns out there's just this giant worm there. And
That's Nick's specialty. He's a worm scientist, so
yes, it is.
it comes into play.
Yeah, because beginning of the movie, he's like, "Oh, these worms should be 4 inches long, and they're 12 inches long, and now this thing's like the size of like a mountain."
Yes.
So that's like the one thing with the series is like the scale of the kaiju is a little like weird sometimes.
I feel like the scale
sometimes they're
varies.
towering over.
Yeah.
Like sometimes they're towering over the rainforest, and other times they're just like on a very small cliff, and they look like they're maybe 20 feet tall.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't mind it
But
though. Yeah.
It's again Saturday morning kids cartoon. Don't worry, don't look too far into it. So Godzilla comes out, starts fighting this kaiju, and the military come in, and they're using their regular conventional weapons, and Nick's like, you guys got to stop it. All you're gonna do is make the kaiju angry. These weapons don't affect these monsters at all. Meanwhile, that's how, again, don't read too far into it, but that's how the 98 movie ended, was he got hit by missiles and died. But again, don't read too far into it. So they're like, oh, we have
Bioweapons.
this special weapon.
Yeah, they're biochemical weapons or whatever.
Yeah, so they shoot out this missile. It like pops out right over the attack, and then like puts all this green mist around the 2 kaiju.
Has no effect on the worm.
Zero.
It
zero
strengthens the
effect.
worm.
Yeah, it actually grows.
And it hurts Godzilla instead.
Yes.
El
So,
Gusano.
oh, Gusano. So they both kind of run away. Elgo Sano tunnels, goes underground, and Godzilla swims underwater because, he's like, I'm hurt. And that's just classic Godzilla trope. At the end of almost every Heisei movie,
Yeah.
I'm going underwater to heal up.
Yeah. So the team discovers that the bioweapon's made from a rare local flower from the island that they're on in Mexico. So they begin gathering the flowers to see if they can figure out a way to make an antidote to cure Godzilla. And they find a couple of flowers, so they start working on that. Um, and they end up that there was another bioweapon on top of the bioweapon that they had.
Yeah.
You want to take it over from me?
Yeah, so as they're finding these flowers, it turns out like they're native to that island, and because they grow in the island and this is a worm and they feed on roots
Yes.
and other organic matter that it's growing, this worm has lived its entire life feeding off of this plant. So it's completely immune to it and actually it's its food source.
Yes.
So they start torching all the flowers because they're like, we can't have these anymore. One, we don't want them making another weapon, and two, this is just going to keep making this worm more strong. So we have to get rid of him. So they have flamethrowers because they have everything on this ship. So going there with the flamethrowers, torching it all, and he cuts back to at the ship, and they just happen to have like a full underwater medical facility for Godzilla on the ship. So they have like a giant oxygen that it can put in his mouth, and obviously the gag is that Nigel goes and swims up to Godzilla and gets completely crushed.
Nigel is the Kenny of the series.
Yes, he is the Kenny of the series. So he'll be rebuilt next episode. Don't worry, he's coming back. But
the cure works.
Yeah, the cure works.
Wakes up.
Yeah. So Craven, big moment is Craven's like, I'm gonna run back and make the cure because I'm the only one who can do it, even though I'm a coward.
Yeah.
He goes, he makes the cure. They give it to Godzilla. We're in the final act. They're starting to fight. They have the other bioweapon. They're about to shoot it. Nick diverts it and shoots it off into like over the ocean.
Yeah, it shoots nothing.
Yeah, which again, don't read too far into it. It's a Saturday morning cartoon. But the other one had like a little parachute that like dropped the poison, and this one just exploded. But Godzilla. They're like, oh, what affects worms? And they're like, it's the heat.
So yeah, Nick goes, yeah, ever seen a worm on a sidewalk on a hot summer day?
Yeah. And I kind of got like Godzilla 2014 vibes from the end of this episode because he basically like kiss of deaths this worm. Like a very similar animation to what happened in that movie.
Yep, he fries the thing and then it shrivels up down into this little almost like humanoid size worm and then dives underground. So he didn't kill El Gusano. El Gusano is still out there underground somewhere and probably trying to feed. Right now those flowers, they burnt all of them, so his food source is gone, but he's still rather large.
Yeah, so I'm assuming he's coming back in a future episode.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Monster Wars, but I don't know enough about that. I know it's like their big
yeah, there's
episode.
a couple of crossover episodes, Monster Wars, and I forget what the other one is. I have them up there on the shelf.
Yeah, but that's the end of the episode. That's what's really good about this. Again, super short narrative, but you get a full thing. There's so much action in these comic books, in this cartoon that
series.
It's a lot that you can't really describe. It's like something you just have to watch. If you guys get lunch breaks at work, it's the perfect series for that.
Yeah,
you have more than enough time. Yeah.
That's where I consume everything is my lunch break.
Yeah, that's episode 4. I hope you guys watch it. Tell us what you think of it down below, and continue watching the series with us because we're in it for the long haul.
Yeah, we're way overdue for a rewatch. Though I only watched it originally in the '90s when it was on TV, and I haven't seen it since.
Yeah,
And it's like watching it all over again for the first time. It's awesome. It's
yeah.
it's it's a beloved series. It redeemed a lot of things that people didn't like about '98 because the people behind this series actually cared about Godzilla a lot, and they really wanted to make it a good kaiju series.
They really did, and they were like, they didn't have time or the money to like get like licenses for Toho monsters, so they're like, we'll just make our own versions.
Yeah, I think they might use a few roars here and there, but
Yeah, nothing that's gonna get them in
no
trouble.
names.
Yeah. What are you talking about? That's just a bird. It's not. It's not Rodan.
It's just
Nah.
a moth,
Mecha
butterfly.
Godzilla? No, that's Cyber Godzilla. All right, so I guess it is time on to the main event, and that is Space Monster Wangmagwi.
So, what did you think about it?
Um, so before I start completely talking about the movie, I do want to say that this is an SRS cinema release. This was a lost Holy Grail movie. You know, I'm air quotes around the lost, but if you guys want, they have the Blu-ray release over on SRS Cinema Store, and the DVD copy for mass release is going to be coming out next month.
Yes, no, next June
June.
3rd, June 13th,
June
same day
13th.
as Shin Ultraman is getting its physical media release.
Yeah.
So the benefit to getting it from SRS is that you will get one of these sweet posters like you have behind us here.
Yes. And it's the
Uh,
Blu-ray.
and it's the Blu-ray,
And
and you get the postcard with it, bookmarks. SRS always gives you a ton of swag whenever you order stuff. It's always limited to while supplies last, so I'm not making too many promises on the bookmarks there, guys. If you don't get upset with me if you don't get a bookmark, but
yeah. And I do
they,
want to say that the transfer on this is amazing. The detail in the movie is really good.
uh, it's so it's like I looked on Reel, like I was like, this is an a much older movie, and for something that was lost, you would think the film would have been
Yeah.
like beat up,
The
like
whatever source that they had was I'm assuming it was
absolutely
original or
excellent.
very
Yeah,
close to, maybe it was a
yeah,
master copy. It was very very well maintained, and uh, they didn't do too much correcting on it. So you still have your film grain, like it's not smoothed out or anything like that.
yes.
So if you're into that and you really like these preserved films, check it out.
It
It's
was
really
like
a
one of
beautiful looking movie.
the, yeah. I was like, it looks like too good. It looks almost like they made a black and white movie. Like they made a movie today and they put a black and white filter on
It
it. Like
did. It really
like the
did.
people looked like really good.
Yeah. And what
The
what year was this movie again? I'm like blanking.
I don't know. I actually did
I'll
not
look it
write.
up.
I did not write that down. Actually, I
I
wanted to
want to say
say
it's
it was
60.
like.
It's 67.
Oh, I was gonna say 64, 67.
So one thing again before we start getting into plot that I want to say about this movie is the some parts of the city look very bare, but other parts of Seoul, the buildings were amazing. Like they were
Yes,
so much
some
better than
of
the Toho buildings at
some
the
of the
time.
models that they did were really good. Like especially like those bigger skyscraper buildings that they
Yeah,
did.
they
Yeah.
reminded me of like Godzilla '84,
Yes.
like those style buildings.
Yes.
So I
The
was very
set
impressed with that,
the
especially for
set
a lower budget movie.
the set building was really good for the and the other thing about this is the monster has a ton of there's part of the plot here that we're avoiding getting into right now is there's not a lot of it, honestly.
Yeah.
It's just the monster is on screen for I don't know, what would you say, like 80% of the movie? Like the whole movie's a monster attack, like
Yeah,
from beginning to end.
I would say I would say probably 60, but that's still a lot for a
Yeah.
kaiju movie.
I
And
feel
you're
like
talking
this
this,
monster's got a lot of screen
you
time.
know, there's Godzilla movies that maybe he's got 10 minutes of screen time. So, you know, they were very generous with the kaiju time on this, and they had sets of like the kaiju built. So they had a handset, they had a headset, they had just like a lot of like on the kaiju set building as well,
Yes.
which is really creative and not really anything you kind of see in another kaiju movie.
Oh no.
Are
Yeah.
people directly interacting with the monster? Usually,
Yeah. I
the
mean,
monster's far off in the city. You might see a foot, and that's about it.
I
Um,
mean, there's not many movies where they've actually gone on top of the kaiju.
yeah, and I think the comparisons like King Kong, but even with King Kong, you usually just get the hand. You really don't see them actually interacting with the monster that much.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so some very impressive things are done in this movie. Um, I guess now we can get into the plot, kind of.
Sure.
Um, so I watched the movie twice. The first time I watched it, it was a little disappointing, to be honest with you. There was definitely some funny moments, but a lot of it was kind of like missed. It kind of flew past me a little bit. Might be a cultural thing, but rewatching the movie, there's definitely some things I picked up on. So the funny thing is, it starts off with these aliens, and they're like, well, we're so advanced, and we're gonna conquer Earth, and all this stuff, and they're like, the Earthlings' technology isn't good enough to detect us. So
Yes.
so the first thing that we get on the Earth, the first scene is them being picked up by the Korean military on their radar.
It was like we're detecting a suspicious object in the storm. We need all the Air Force people to report to the base immediately to inspect what's going on.
So yeah,
And then another thing is like they don't really have a ton of technology because it's just their ship, and then they send the monster down. And the monster to me appeared like it was a prisoner on the ship because it's in a cage
it
and it's kind of
was.
normal
Yeah.
size, and then when it gets to Earth, it gets big, but they don't show that. It's just
So
the
they say that
first
there's
scene-
a pressure. The difference in air pressure is going to make the kaiju bigger and more angry.
yes.
So
In my
it's-
opinion, it wasn't very angry. It was a pretty docile kaiju the whole movie,
Yeah.
honestly.
yeah, it took its time destroying those sets.
Yeah. Yes, it would like inspect the sets.
Yes. So we have the Commander Ho and his fiance, and basically he has to go because he's in charge of the Air Force, or like the plane fighters. He's not in charge. He's like the head pilot, and she's like, "Oh, we're getting married tomorrow. We're still gonna go on with this, right?"
And he's like, of course.
Yeah, he's like, "Yeah, sure." It was also a giant monsoon that is
Yeah,
supposed to happen, but we never see a monsoon in the whole movie. They keep talking about this
I
monsoon
did not
and how
even-
the monsoon's going to be covering up the invasion.
I forgot about that,
And there's
honestly.
never a monsoon.
Oh my god. Because then he just got all into the monster rush, and I had the monsoon thing completely just, I
And-
forgot about it.
and-
Now that it's-
And like, in the opening night scene, they kind of show it being a little windy. A little bit. But then, like, the next day when it's supposed to be monsooning,
It's like sunny.
it's a perfectly good day.
Yeah, it's dry day. And the bride's crying that her wedding day is going to be ruined because of the storm. They were
Yeah.
still going on about it. They didn't know quite exactly at the time that there was a monster until, like, her aunt comes running into the room while she's getting ready, and she's like, "What are you guys still doing here? King Kong's coming to destroy the city." They
Yeah.
literally say King Kong is coming, and I'm like, how the hell do they know about the monster already? Like, it just kind of like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
that's one of the things that they like that they touch on in the commentary. They're just like they're like one like for aliens that are saying that they've never been to Earth and don't know anything about Earth. They know like the name of Korea. They know the name of the monsoon that's going to be hitting Korea. They know what level technology we have. He's like there's a lot of plot holes. Like even like the Korean movie like guy, which I forgot the names, but like the guy from like the California University. He's like, there's a lot of plot holes in this movie, but
oh boy, are there.
yeah. So as like they're fleeing, we kind of cut to kind of our secondary characters, which it's pretty crazy. Like, they gave us backstories about these two actors in the commentary. The one that wore the hat with like the flatter face, like the taller one, he had a 30-year acting career and is in over 400 Korean movies.
Wow.
Yeah, 400. He'd have that. And then the guy who played Commander Ho, I think he was like in like 300 movies and would often have 2 movies a month coming out.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy.
That's pretty crazy. But the thing is, he's not even in the movie that much.
No, he's not.
Like,
And then
they open it. So they open this movie like this bride and this commander are gonna be like the main focus of the movie, and like
he might have 5 minutes of screen time.
Barely.
Yeah.
And the bride is in it more than him.
Yes.
And then we cut to these two guys. But before we cut to these two guys, actually, the monster does appear, and the bride and her mom flee, and the mom faints, the bride faints, and the monster just picks up the bride, and then he walks around the rest of the movie like this, just
because he doesn't know what to do with it.
He's like, why did I pick this up?
Yeah, and like that's another thing that like the Korean film specialist. He's like, I want to make the distinction that this is not King Kong. He's like, he has zero attachment to this lady. He's like, he's just holding her and doesn't know what to do with her.
To me, this movie is just a comedy. Honestly, I cracked up through the whole thing.
Yeah. Now that I've rewatched it the second time, there's definitely a lot more comedic moments. I don't think I'm going to be rewatching it for probably like 5 years, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because
I got a lot of other things I got to watch.
You were texting me about it. You're like, you really oversold this movie. I'm like, this thing was hysterical. I'm like, I don't know how you're not loving it.
So the other gentleman in this Laurel and Hardy duo, the shorter gentleman that has the wife,
yes.
Apparently he hosted like this like Korean version of American Idol for over 20 years. And it was a weekly television show that aired every single week for 20 years. And he just passed away in 2023. Or 2022.
Oh wow.
So they were like, he's not really known for being an actor. Like, he's like a TV personality, like almost like a Ryan Seacrest, or like I guess Dick Clark would be a more apropos, where it's just like this like TV legend was in this like obscure movie.
Wow.
But like,
so we have these two guys, and they're basically just degenerate gamblers in the middle of a kaiju attack. They're in the middle of the street, and the one guy, he's married, as you said, and he's betting his house and his wife that he could outlast the other guy without running away from the kaiju. And the other guy's just basically betting his whole life savings, everything he's got. And the space monster appears, the police, people are running by them, the police come running by them, shooting in the sky, and like, what are you doing? Go. And the two of them just still stand there, and they keep like trying not to be scared, and then they're hugging each other, like, because they're scared.
Yeah.
And then they both take off at the exact same time. They both just start running.
But they're like, this doesn't count.
They're like, this doesn't count. And then the one guy jumps in the sewer, the other guy jumps in the garbage can, and the space monster walks by, kicks the garbage can, and the guy gets a little beat up.
Yeah, but I think that like the blood was like actually like oil, like there was like a little oil can there.
Yeah.
So like it looked like he was a lot worse than he was.
Yeah.
But like he got his head rocked, so he's a little loopy.
Yeah, he got kicked by a kaiju in like a can. Like he got kicked a good couple of feet.
Yeah. So then they end up back at like the guy with the wife's house. And the guy's like, "Oh, you're my new wife now. I want you in a bed."
He's like, "Yeah," and the other guy's like dazed, and he's like, "Oh," and she's like, "What are you talking about?" And he's trying to kiss her the whole time, and she's like, "No kissing, no kissing."
Yeah, she's like hitting him and everything.
Yeah, and then the monster roars, and then she's like, "All right, new husband."
Yes.
She starts calling him new husband, and while her regular husband's on the floor, and she calls her old husband. And I'm like,
and then she's like, take me away. And then she's like, we're just one big family now. And they're like hiding him, and like the house is like getting like ripped apart. So the film guy in the commentary, he was like, It's like the way they treat women, like they were treating like their wives in this movie. He's like, that's not like the way like Korean culture is or was at the time.
They're
He's
just
like,
degenerate
yeah,
gamblers.
this is just to show like how degenerate these people are.
Oh my god.
So we'll see these characters later, but then it cuts to the I guess like the secondary protagonist of this movie, and that's the name is Squirrel of the kid.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's in the credits of it. So
Yeah,
that's what they were saying in
this
the
movie,
movie.
like, they really didn't like put out anybody's name
They
at
barely
all.
said name. Like Commander Ho, you get it from the credits, and if you look really close at his name badge, it actually says his name on his like military
Oh,
badge over here.
yeah.
But like
There was like no names. So when I was writing, I was like the
barely any
bride,
names.
the commander, the kid, the gambling degenerates.
So, what's something that's not made clear in the movie is that like it's obvious that the kid's homeless and
Yes.
is looting somebody's house, but like
Yes.
playing. He's a kid. He's being playful about it.
Yeah.
But it's actually the bedroom of the bride.
Oh, it is. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that.
So yeah, because like the bobbleheads match and like the mirror, and you can actually see like her bed in the background, but they don't make it very obvious, and they don't really draw a reference to it.
Oh.
But it is 100%. That's why later on in the movie, when they meet up, she's like, "Where did you get this apple?"
Oh. That's hysterical. That's good. That's good. Now it makes sense.
So he like he's like he has like a little knife.
And he's got all this food out too in their house. He's taking out like all their food because everybody's evacuated, so it's just an empty house. He's got the radio on.
Yeah. So he goes on top of a building. He's got a little like kitchen knife, and it's not even like a chef's knife. It's like
It's like a steak knife.
yeah, it's like a steak knife. It's not very big.
It's not big or sharp. It's like yeah. I'm pretty sure it's like a steak knife.
So he gets on the kaiju, is playing around in the kaiju's ear, cuts out one eardrum.
And then he
Goes-
falls into the skull.
Falls through the skull like it's a cartoon. Pees in like his like
Yes,
nasal.
he starts falling out of his nose, and then he gets up and pees.
Yeah, he like unzips and like pees in like the guy's like nose,
Yeah,
and then he goes up the other ear, cuts out that eardrum, and that's basically like his whole. But this is like 20 minutes. This is
yeah.
going
This
on
whole,
for.
this
It's like
whole,
really long.
yeah. This is super abridged right now. I mean, before he even climbs onto the kaiju too, he's listening to the radio, and he's like, "Oh, they're all cowards. They don't know what they're doing." So the kid climbs on the roof, gets on the kaiju, and all that happens. But like, yeah, this whole like he's like getting knocked around the whole time. The space monster's trying to get him out of his ear, and he's knocking him back and forth in his skull, and the kid's just rolling around in this monster's skull. And
Yeah.
finally, after he cuts the second eardrum, he like sort of pokes out. He sees a bride just there on the hand because the guy doesn't know what the hell to do with her. He's like, I picked this thing up and I don't know what to do now. I don't know if I should put it down and just keep walking. And the kid kind of peeks out the ear. He sees her. He calls to her, and she kind of like looks up at him and then passes out again.
Yeah.
And then he looks towards the back and he sees a device on the kaiju's back. So he finally kind of climbs down, and it turns out it's like the control device, and he like pulls like it looks like a little tiny like microphone almost out of it. And it's funny that I call it a microphone because later on in the movie, on the spaceship, we see the aliens using that device that's the control thing on its back as a microphone. It's
Yeah.
the exact same prop. So he pulls this thing out of the kaiju, and it's just all this wire. He's just pulling it out, and it cuts back to the alien ship for like a little. And they're like, "Oh, we've lost control of the kaiju. That's the radio device." And they're like, "Oh, use the secondary radio waves or something like that."
Yeah. And like one of the other jokes is like, not only did they get the radar thing wrong, but they were like, "Oh, they must have taken out the kaiju with their advanced weaponry," and it's like a kid with a dull knife.
Yeah, and this kid is cutting the kaiju's eardrums with a knife, like a steak knife. I mean,
Yes. So like this kaiju's like not strong
as
at
indestructible
all.
as they thought.
And then even at the end of the movie, the way they kill the kaiju's like really nothing. They really didn't do anything to the kaiju. But we'll get to that at the end. There's some funny bits in this where they're kind of everybody in the city is evacuated to this giant tower, and there's a couple funny bits in it.
The whole like just the people in the streets are even funny. Like, like when we've seen Godzilla movies, War of the Gargantuas, Camera, whenever people are evacuating the city, they're evacuating like very uniform and everyone's going in the same direction. A very uniform, organized evacuation. It's a little chaotic, but it's literally like they're like, all right, for this scene, just run wherever the hell you want to go. And it's just like people are just like walking around, running around in like circles.
Yes.
Like, their chaos is hysterical.
Like people are going like all crisscross directions. Even the police officers are running like randomly. And in reality, it's probably just like we need people running for this scene, so they just ran around in a circle. But like even in like the commentary, the guy's like he's like, you can see how like completely unorganized like the evacuation is.
And
like people don't know where to go.
Throughout this movie, like usually you see a military, you don't see a single tank in this movie. You barely see any military. It's just police officers you see the whole time, basically. There's one scene towards the end where you see like two military guys like with binoculars watching the monster, and like another two guys firing a cannon, and like that cannon is like the height of their military technology there apparently, and it's literally a cannon. It's not like a maser cannon. It's like old school like
cannon.
Hit it with the thing, light it up, and shoot. Like it's
So they didn't have like apparently like the way like the Korean military works is like they have basically it's the United States military, and they don't have too many resources, so it's like they really only have police, and like the Air Force doesn't want to attack because they don't want to have any civilian casualties. But that's why they have police officers kind of like shooting at the monster. But like the way this kaiju dies, they could have probably killed it with gunfire. But like they we cut back to the big building where everybody is. We have the mother looking for the daughter. We have the pregnant lady giving birth, and we have one guy who's got to do the biz. So he's squatting over a piece of newspaper, and then the kaiju rocks the building, and he splat right inside of it.
He falls right onto this crap in the newspaper. I thought that bit was hysterical.
That actually was hysterical. I actually did laugh out loud.
The guy, so and when that scene opens, like the guy's like in like this building full of people. It's like a big building too. So I don't know why if a kaiju's attacking, you would evacuate to a skyscraper type building. Like you think that's primary target right there. And the whole time, this is like this whole evacuation scene with the building. It's like a pretty long scene in the movie. I mean, we're talking like maybe like 10 minutes at least, and the whole time the space monster's just kind of like scoping out the building, like admiring the architecture. Like he's not even like hitting it right away. Like, and he does that with a lot of things throughout this movie. He's kind of just like looks at it like he's like so confused this whole movie. And the other thing during this scene is the other two gambling degenerates are back. It's kind of cutting back.
Yes, they are. Yeah, they are back.
And they're still sort of fleeing the city a little themselves too.
But they also have fistful of cash.
Yes,
like placing bets.
They have like literal stacks. Like they're about to shoot like a rap music video. I mean, I don't know where it came from. But like stacks.
They must have stopped at the bank and took their money out.
Yeah, they're like, oh, this is quick bank stop during a kaiju evacuation. And this time, while the space monster's attacking the building, one of the things that happens is he picks up a giant piece of rubble, like a giant stone, and they're betting on which direction he's going to throw the stone, which city he's going to throw it towards. And the dude that lost his, allegedly lost the bet, where he lost his wife, loses that bet, and he's like, I'm sick of losing to you, and he's like, one more bet.
Yeah,
I think that's about it for those two guys. We don't get to see what the outcome is of the next bet.
So he kind of destroys the tower, but like not 100%.
Yeah.
Like, um, he still has Squirrel and the bride in his hand. He's just clearly disorientated. We finally get like some government intervention. So they're like, okay, electrify the power grid. We're gonna electrocute him once he leaves the city. And we also cut to the military, and there's a bit of a mistranslation here. Apparently, according to the if the way the scene plays out, it's the commander saying, if you don't do this, we're gonna have to use nukes to
Yes.
destroy it. And apparently the actual translation is because it sounds like the commander's like, we're nuking the monster. I don't care about casualties. But
Oh.
the translation is that he actually does and is trying to do everything to avoid that.
Because the
So it's
translation,
not.
the way I got it, I thought that they said if this doesn't work, we're gonna nuke it.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, that's true. But like the way that it's phrased, it sounds like he like is like, oh, we're nuking it in the
Yeah.
city. I don't
Yeah.
care about the
Yeah.
casualties. But when the commander questions him and is like, but we're gonna have so many casualties if we drop a nuke. It's actually like, yeah, I know, I really don't want to do this. So like, let's make sure we don't have to.
Yeah.
But like that was one translation thing that like the commentator wanted to make clear.
Clarify. Okay.
And he's like, this is the first time we actually see like the government, not the military, like the government intervening and actually trying something instead of just having police officers do whatever police officers are doing. So he's like, it's like the biggest kaiju trope is like, let's see if we can electrify it, and it never works. And of course, it doesn't work. The electrification, it kind of like stuns him a little bit, but it doesn't do too much.
No.
So now we have Commander Ho and his fleet. They're going towards the kaiju because now they're outside the city. He's by a lake, and it's really weird the way they kill the monster. So Commander Ho like drops out of his ship somehow with a parachute, picks up the girl and the kid, and then also parachutes off the kaiju.
So the way okay, so the way I don't know the way I took this whole sequence here. So early in the movie, we didn't mention this. While Squirrel is inside cutting his ear, he kind of gets pissed off and he sprays these buildings with this. I don't know if you want to call it a ray.
So it's
like
supposed to symbolize napalm.
Okay.
Because it's right post the Korean War. It's about 10 years after the Korean War. It's supposed to represent the napalm that was used during the war.
He sprays a bunch of buildings with this, and the buildings like catch on fire and they melt. So he hits Commander Ho's plane with this while they're shooting at him. And like you said, Commander Ho ejects, somehow manages to grab the girl and the kid off him while he's parachuting down.
Yeah.
And the plane crashes into the monster, and the monster, I believe because of the way we saw the buildings burn earlier, the fire just keeps spreading on the monster. But back at the ship, the alien ship, they were already retreating. They were done. They're like, this operation's over. If the atmosphere gets destroyed, we can't take over this planet. So the way I interpreted it, because I could have sworn the alien said that they're going to terminate the monster. So I think they also self-initiated a self-destruct because they didn't want the humans to nuke the planet because they still want it for themselves. It was going to sort of leave it open for a sequel.
That kind of makes sense. Because kind of the way I interpreted it was like they don't have control of the monster anymore. A plane crashed into it, caught fire, and the monster died and kind of blew up. Kind of blew up like Power Ranger style, where it's like the monster's dead and it just goes in the background.
Yeah.
And like, like I know if that was like, again, like another joke, like, oh, conventional weapons aren't going to work on him, and just like a plane crashes and like that's how it gets taken out.
I'm pretty sure that the alien like said to execute the monster pretty much because they didn't want the planet to get destroyed.
Want to because they didn't want it to get nuked.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's what happened or if the thing just burnt from the napalm stuff on the airplane and the fire just consumed it and it exploded.
Yeah. It's a little unclear, and even they were kind of like, that's the ending. Like it was like so anticlimactic. Um,
Yeah, it's super rapid death, like boom.
yeah, and then they're back on the beach. Commander Ho, Bride, Squirrel, and they adopt Squirrel, and they walk off on the beach, and that's the end of the movie.
They're like, Squirrel, you're our brother now.
Yeah. Um, One thing that they did mention in the movie is that it's a common trope in Korean movies is for families to get separated, and they say like that's supposed to symbolize the separation of North and South, and how it's very painful, and how they wish that they could be back together. So it's one thing to
Oh.
know. They said there was a lot of like cultural symbolism in this movie,
Hmm.
even though it's not like the greatest kaiju movie in the world. Um, they said like for Korean culture was pretty good. Like they had that one sign that was like, "Oh, 1990 World Fair." They weren't sure if that meant that the movie took place in 1990 because he's like it still looks like 1960s Korea. He's like, it doesn't make sense. He's like, I don't know if that was like supposed to be like a, hey, we can get this, because at the time the country was very poor post-war. The economy was trying to recover, so
Oh.
he's like, I think this was supposed to be like a, hey, we can get this country to a spot where we're gonna have world fairs, people coming here, and we're gonna be a center of technology, which kind of Korea is at this point. I mean, Samsung's like one of the biggest electronic companies on the planet, and also they produce like most like a lot of the chips besides China. So like they really have rebounded quite well.
Yeah.
So yeah, mixed feelings about this movie. It's like an hour and a half long. It's worth a watch. Definitely worth a watch. And if you want to watch it in the best quality possible, again, the Blu-ray looks amazing.
It's
Like it's
it's really
great
good.
quality.
Yeah. I mean, it's all the most man-looking scenes are the airplane scenes because they were literally shot on like the airplanes. They don't use the models in this; they're like real
Yeah,
airplanes.
well, it's stock footage.
Yeah,
Yeah,
stock airplane footage. So it's
yeah.
like,
That's where it looks the grainiest
yeah,
because they didn't actually probably transfer film for that. It's
mm,
just stock
yeah, yeah,
footage.
yeah.
Probably copied a million times. The commentator was like, I've seen this footage like so many times. It's like it's just recycled over and over again.
I, I,
One thing he also did want to note is like he doesn't say that it's a Korean. I mean, he didn't say it's an American nuke that they're going to use. He's like Korea can't have nuclear weapons. He's like we never have and we never will. He's like it's illegal. So he's like I don't even know where they're getting this nuke from in this plot.
that's pretty funny.
Yeah, the commentary was actually really good.
Yeah,
And that's one of the things like I kind of always like knock SRS for is that we might get a commentary track sometimes. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we get subtitles. Sometimes we don't. This one we got subtitles and a commentary track. So I was really happy with it. I think their best release they've ever done on disc because there's a bunch of special features on it, not just the commentary. And they put like a lot of effort into this one.
no, yeah, this was a big one. I really liked it. I mean, it's a cheesy movie, but I loved it.
Yeah,
I had a great time watching it.
yeah.
Did they say anything in the commentary about that one weird scene where he's holding the girl and he kind of like gets like dazed by her shoulder strap falling off and he's like, ooh, and
No, didn't mention it at
she's
all.
like, oh, let me fix this. Like he's
They
like,
didn't
oh,
mention it at all.
he's like, there's some cleave over here.
Zero,
It
zero
was so
mention.
weird.
Zero mention.
There's some more humor that they stuck in there. I'm like, there was just like I going into this movie, I did not expect it to be like this jam packed with humor and
Yeah.
cheesiness at all.
Yeah. No, it was a good. If I had to give it, I'd say probably like 6 out of 10.
Yeah, yeah, that's
Decent
pretty good.
enough to watch. I've watched worse.
No,
I watched way worse.
I had a good time watching it.
Yeah.
I had a really good time watching it.
I
And
mean,
the one other thing is that bothered me about this when I was watching it was not about the movie itself, but like the story. This country, the city is going to be destroyed. And this girl's, all she's concerned about is her wedding. She's literally like, my wedding's going to get canceled because of this. I'm like, I get it, but I'm like, literally, like, people are dying and houses are getting destroyed outside. And you're like, but my wedding.
Yeah.
like, like, oh, the priest, the wedding officiator evacuated. Oh, who would have guessed?
Yeah, at
Like,
least the hairdresser stayed.
yes, I'm like, what is going on here?
Yeah. Bit of a weird. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention that the squirrel gives her back her apple, and that's why she's like, oh, where'd you get this apple from? That's supposed to be a big joke.
Yeah, because he had the apple on him, and she's like, oh, are you hungry? Why don't you have this apple? And she's like, where'd you get an apple?
Yeah. Your house. But yeah, I think that's it for this episode of the podcast. Thank you guys for watching. If you stayed this long, please give the video a like or the podcast a heart or a like or a follow. Leave comments. Next episode, we're going to be covering Territory, and I don't know what movie, but I'm sure it's going to be something good.
Figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. But yeah.
See you next week.
See
or
ya.
whatever.
Bye.